Begin today the Gemara on Daf Chaf Aleph, 3 lines down from the top of the Yamud, where it says Meisvei. Okay, so we're in the middle of an Inyan. The Gemara before brought from Rabbi Yochanan, actually brought it Rav Dimi, said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that there are 3 different psukim that speak about the halacha that a person, when he says something, the words that he says should be true in different ifanim. Regarding the past, regarding the future, and then there's another 2 categories. There's the Shevuos, and then there's a neder. So what he explained was that there are 3 psukim. When it says in the Torah, "Leisishav b'shmi la sheker," sheker, he says, refers to a person that is making a Shevuos regarding the future. He has to keep his word. Then when it says in the Torah, the term of shav, shav, that shav includes a person that speaks about something that everybody knows, that this is a rock, and he says it's a piece of gold. That's one thing. But it also includes a shvuah that a person says about the past, something personal, not necessarily that everybody knows. He says, I ate, I did not eat, and he said a lie. And then, when there's a pasuk where it says, Lo yachal devarai, do not desecrate your word, that's not referring to a shvuah, that refers to a neder. A person takes a vow, and he has to keep that neder, that's Lo yachal devarai. That's how Rav Dimi explained the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Say the Gemara asks a question on this. Meisvei, we learned in the Braise where it says, Ezi Shevuos shav. What is considered to be a Shevuos shav, which literally means a Shevuos in vain? Nishba l'shanis yidu ala adam. So one case is, or the case of this Shevuos shav rather, is when a person swears about something that everybody knows and what it is. Here the there's different examples of this. The example that I mentioned before, that a rock, a person swears about a rock that it's a piece of gold. That's a Shevuos shav, a Shevuah in vain. Now, Shevuos sheker, what's considered to be a Shevuos sheker, the term sheker in the Torah, nishba lahachlif. When a person swears and he's exchanging or he's going away from the truth. Now, this term of lahachlif is not something that everybody knows, but it's talking about something personal regarding himself. And he's swearing about the past. I ate, I didn't eat, and he's saying a lie. So what do we see here in this Braise? That what is the term sheker in the Torah? Not like Rabbi Yochanan, that said that sheker means that you made a shvuah, and at the time that you made the shvuah, your word is not yet sheker. But if you're not going to keep it later, then it's going to be a lie. Then it's going to become a sheker. But over here in this Braise it says, sheker means nishba lehachlif, that as soon as he makes the shvuah, and he's saying something different than what the truth is in the past, he's saying a lie right then. That's what sheker means. So that's a question of Rabbi Yochanan. So the Gemara says you have to read the words of the Braise differently according to Rabbi Yochanan. Eima nishba u machlif. That sheker means that he swears that he's going to do something, and then u machlif, and later he exchanges from that. In other words, he doesn't keep his word. That's the nishba l'sheker, and that's nishba u machlif. That's how you read this Braise. Okay, this is all according to one version of what Rabbi Yochanan said. Now the Gemara brings that there's another version of what Rabbi Yochanan said. Ki asa Ravin. Till Rabbi Dimi was quoting Rabbi Yochanan. When Ravin came, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Amar Rabbi Avo, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, that he argues on actually all 3 points that Rabbi Yochanan said. The way you divide what the psukim is saying. Again, there's one pasuk that says sheker, there's another pasuk that says shav, and there's a third pasuk that says lo yachal devarei. So the way he explains what these 3 psukim are talking about is different. So he said, achalti v'lo achalti, when a person makes a shvuah about the past, I ate or I did not eat, and as soon as he says that out of his mouth, it's a lie. That's what the Torah meant by sheker. Sheker means as soon as he says it, it's a sheker. V'azarasei miloi seshavu b'shmi la sheker. Do not take an oath in my name, that's a lie. When a person says, I will eat or I will not eat, so it's not a lie yet, but if he's not going to keep his word, then it'll be a lie. So what's the source of this? The source of this is do not desecrate your word. So that means that goes on the future, if you don't keep it. And then ve'ezi Shevuos shav. What does the term shav in the Torah mean? Nishba l'shanis yidu ala adam. That refers only to the case where a person swears and he's saying something that everybody knows is not true. Here the example Rashi brings is that ala ish shu isha. A person says regarding a man that he's a woman, that's called l'shanis yidua. Okay, so we see regarding all 3 points what these psukim are talking about. Ravin, that quotes over here from Rabbi Yirmiyah, from Rabbi Avo, the name of Rabbi Yochanan is arguing with what was said before in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Mr. Gemara says, this that Rabbi Avo said from Rabbi Yochanan, lav b'feirish itmeh. Rabbi Yochanan, he didn't hear it clearly from Rabbi Yochanan. Ela miklale itmer. He learned it out from something that Rabbi Yochanan said regarding another discussion, also regarding Shevuos, and he came to the conclusion that according to Rabbi Yochanan, Shevuos sheker means, like he says over here, Shevuos sheker means achalti v'lo achalti. As we'll see here, and here the Gemara brings a discussion that goes down through most of this Amud, and towards the end, we'll see where it comes out that Rabbi Vo understood from Rabbi Yochanan that Shevuos sheker is achalti v'lo achalti on the past. So where will you see this? The Amar Avidi, about Ovin, Amar of Amram, Amar of Yitzchak, Amar of Yochanan. That Rabbi Yehuda Oimer, Mishum Rabbi Yosi Aglili, that Kol Lo Yisasasha B'Teireh, anytime there's a lav in the Teireh, it's a lav sheyesh by Maisa. If it's a lav, where if you transgress, there's an action, like an olav. So then there's malchus. But for she'ein by Maisa, if the lav, then when you do not, when you are over on the lav, there's no action involved, ain't like an olav. There's no malchus for this. That's the rule. But there are three exceptions. Chodz bin nishba, except the case of a person that swears falsely, and that is no action involved. Umeimar, a person that exchanges one animal of kachim for a carbon for another, which is also a lav, and it's just words. He says that this should be exchanged with another, and there's malchus for that as well. And also umekalel es chaveiroi b'shem, and when one curses his friend with the name of Hashem, and there it's only words, it's not an action, and there's malchus for that as well. So as Rashi brings here, in the Gemara in Tamura, it discusses the source for Meimar and Mekalel, why are they an exception. But over here, the Gemara is going to focus on what we're discussing, a Shvuah. Where is the source that a Shevuos sheker, even when there's no action, there's still malchus? So now the Gemara says, Nishba minalam, what's the source for the Shvuah without an action that is malchus? Amar Rab Yochanan mishum Rab Shimon ben Yochai. Amakra, the pasuk says, Leisisa Shem Hashem Alekecha Lashov. Do not say Hashem's name in vain. So this refers to a shvuah in vain. And then the pasuk goes on to say, Kilo Yenake. The pasuk actually says, Kilo Yenake Hashem es Hashisha Esmer Lashov. So what do we learn from this term? A conclusion of the pasuk Kilo Yenake. Bezdin Shamayla Eimenake say. It says that Hashem will not cleanse this person. So the Bezdin Shamayla will not cleanse him. But he will be cleansed in the bezin here below when he gets the malchus. That is the einish and the kapara of the person that will be cleansed. So therefore, even though it's a lav shem by maisa, because a person just said here the simple pshat of, as I mentioned, shav. Shav means a person swears l'shanis asayidua, and that's a lav shem by maisa. But the pasuk is indicating that the bezin shel mata gives a malchus. That was the drasha of Rabbi Yochanan in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Okay, we're going to get back to what Rabbi Yochanan said about this, but the Gemara interjects here with a question on this drasha. Amalei Rav Papa Abaye, Rav Papa asks Abaye, maybe the Torah is saying, Ki lo yenake klal. It's saying a person that swears this Shevuos sheker and there's no action, he will not be cleansed at all. That's what the pasuk means to say, and therefore no malchus either, because he won't get cleansed. So Abaye answered him, no, you can't say that. If the pasuk would say that in this case the person will not be cleansed, then you're right. It's saying that he wouldn't get malchus and therefore he won't be cleansed at all. Pasuk adds and says that he will not be cleansed by Hashem. That means Hashem udeinu menake. Aval bezin shel mato malka noisa menake. So the drasha is like Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rav Shimon ben Yochai, that here the bezin shel mato will give him malchus and he will be cleansed. Okay, now coming back to what Rabbi Yochanan continued to say. Ashkechon Shevuos shav. This is a pasuk that says the term of Shevuos shav when a person is nishba l'shanis asayidua, to say in a rock that it's a piece that it is gold, and on that he gets malchus. Now Shevuos sheker minolon. How about if it's a different kind of shvuah, a shvuah that is a lie? And so where do we know that this kind of a shvuah, without an action to be over on this shvuah, that he'll get malchus for this as well? So now, this Rabbi Yochanan did not hear from Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. Rabbi Yochanan didei Yoma, so Rabbi Yochanan himself added to what Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai said, L'shav, Lashav, Shtei Pamim. In that pasuk it says Lashav twice. It says in the beginning, Sis Hashem Hashem Lekecha Lashav. Then it says Lo Yanake. And then after the pasuk concludes, Es Asayisa, Es Shmoi Lashav. Why does it say twice Lashav? So now, Lashav means when a person makes a shvuah in vain, L'shanis Asayidua. But we already know that from the first time it says Lashav. So Shav. The second time it says Shav is extra. So we say that the Torah is referring to a different case. Taneyu inyan l'Shevuos sheker. The second time is referring to a Shevuos sheker that he'll get malchus even if it's a lav she'ein boi maisa. That's the statement of Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, now here came.
Shevuos sheker and Shevuos sheker is the same thing.
One second. So now here the Gemara says Rabbi Vo came along to explain what exactly is Shevuos sheker. Shevuos shav is nishba l'shanis sayidua. Person says he swears on a rock that it's gold. Okay, but now Shevuos sheker that Rabbi Yochanan came and added that's also chayiv malchus even when there's no ma'aseh. What is that Shevuos sheker that he was referring to? So now Vahavi bought Rabbi Vo asked on this. Hi Shevuos sheker. This Shevuos sheker that Rabbi Yochanan added here. Heichidami. What was he talking about? So there's a few examples that you could explain what Shevuos sheker would mean. If you're going to say Shevuos sheker means Shevuos shaloi eichel, person swears I'm not going to eat today, and va'achal and he went and did eat, that you don't need a pasuk to be marbel. Lav sheyesh by ma'asehu. Here he's transgressing with doing an action, so he's chayiv malchus. For Ella, you're going to say what is the case? The Amar Shevuos eichel. In the future, he says I'm going to eat today, and v'lo yachal, and he did not eat. So he was over on that shvuah by abstaining from eating, by not doing an action. But the thing is, though, this cannot be the case that Rabbi Yochanan was speaking about when he came to be marba Shevuos sheker, because there's another place where Rabbi Yochanan himself said that there actually is no malchus here. Says the Gemara, "Hai miloike." On such a case, would he actually get any malchus? But we learned about this case. A person makes a shvuah that I'm going to eat this loaf of bread today, and the day passes, and he did not eat it. Rabbi Yochanan, V'Reish Lakish, the Amri Tarvayu, ain't a loike. Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish both said that there is no malchus in this case. Now, the reason why there's no malchus, they argue about. Rabbi Yochanan ain't a loike. Rabbi Yochanan says there is no malchus. Mishum dava lav shein by ma'aseh. Because this is a lav, but by him being over on his shvuah, he did no action. V'chalav shein by ma'aseh and loike nolo. So we clearly see that Rabbi Yochanan holds that rule of lav shein by ma'aseh is still in effect regarding this case. This is not part of the exception. That shvuah, you get a malchus and lav shem by ma'aseh. This is not what Rabbi Yochanan meant to add with Shevuos sheker. Now, Reish Lakish says there's a different reason why in such a case there's no malchus. Ein loike mishum dahave hasra safik. Because the warning, in order to give malchus, there has to be a proper warning where the person is being warned that he's going to get malchus if he's over on this lav. But over here, this is a doubtful warning. Why is it a doubtful warning? Because he says he's going to eat the loaf of bread today. That could be till the very last second of the day. So when are you going to give him the asra? You can't be medactic to give him the asra mamish at the last second. So you're going to give him the asra sometime in the afternoon, and the person doesn't take the asra seriously because he says, "Okay, I have more time. I'm not being over now. I'll have more time later." And then later he forgets about this asra, and then he does not end up eating. So therefore, this asra is a doubtful asra. And therefore, this kind of asra is not a asra. We learned about this in Masechta Makis as a machlekes. Rabbi Yochanan actually holds this kind of asra is a proper warning. But the point is, you see over here that the case of Shevuos sheker is not going on the future in both cases, because if he said I'm not going to eat in the future and he did eat, there's an action. If he says that he's going to eat and he did not eat, where there's no action, Rabbi Yochanan clearly says that there's no malchus on this. So therefore, on this, Rabbi Vo explained what Rabbi Yochanan is talking about. The case that he said that we're marbe and Shevuos sheker is ba'achalti v'lo yachalti. It's when a person is speaking about the past. He's saying I ate or I didn't eat on the past, and on that there's no action in this Shevuos sheker. It's a lie as soon as he says it, and on that the Torah comes and says that he gets malchus. So what do we clearly see over here? That Rabbi Vo is explaining what Rabbi Yochanan said, that what is Shevuos sheker? When a person makes a shvuah, with the moment he says it out of his mouth, it's a lie, because he was speaking about the past. So that's weird. Gemara said before, Rabbi Vo took this point of what Rabbi Yochanan said, different than what was said before on Daf Chav, that Rav Dimi said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan. Rav Dimi said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that Shevuos sheker goes on the future. But here we see that no, he said it goes on the past. Okay, but now the Gemara asks and explains, why do we make this distinction? Why, regarding a shvuah, that a person says, and it's a lie the moment he says it, and there's no action to be over here, to be over this. He gets malchus, and I compare it, and I say that the Torah wrote 2 times shav, and I include this case that you get malchus. And when a person makes a shvuah on the future, that he will eat, and he did not eat, over there I don't include it, and I say because there's no action, he will not get malchus. What's the reason for this distinction? What's the reason for this distinction?
There could be a case where he says, I will not eat, and he doesn't realize, I will eat, and he doesn't realize that the next day is Yom Kippur.
Oh, okay, that's a different story.
So automatically,
Okay. Okay. Says the Gemara Maishna, what's the difference? Rav explains, because befeidish ripsa teira shvuas sheker daimul shvuas shav. The Torah is clearly using the expression of shav the first time, and the second time it uses the term shav. So when it says the term shav, it's saying to include a term of shvuas sheker, which is similar to the shvuas shav. That's the term that the Torah uses here. And therefore I say, Ma shav l'sha'avar, just like the first time when it says a shvuas shav, it's speaking about something which is l'sha'avar, because it's talking about the case of nishba l'shanis yidua. He says on a rock that it's gold. That's not about the future. Af sheker, well, it's something that exists already from before. It's like known to everybody from before. Av sheker nami l'sha'avar. So too the sheker that we're being marbe here is similar to the shvuas shav, which is when a person says something personal, not everybody knows, but it's a chalti v'lo yachalti, going in the past that it was a lie as soon as he said it out of his mouth. But in a case where a person said a shvuas sheker regarding the future, and he's over on that without a maisa, for that there is no malchus. Taisva says over here a little bit different, that the pshat in the Gemara, when it says beferish ripsatayt, it's connected to what we learned before in the Gemara on Daf Chof, where it mentioned that in the Aseres Adibris, in Parshas Yisro it says the term shav, and in Parshas Vaschana it says the term sheker. And because it says these two terms, b'dibur echad nemru, they were said by the Eibishter in one utterance, and therefore the shav and the sheker are similar, has to be both on the sha'avar.
How do you get around the fact that it's a Lav Shem and Maisa in Leica?
It's a special Gzeres HaKosov. This is a unique chiddush when the Torah says, Lo Yanaka Hashem. Lo Yanaka Hashem, only Hashem won't cleanse him, but the Bezdin Shalmata will cleanse him by giving him malchus. Yeah. Okay, so the Gemara asks him this. Eisvei Rabbi Yirmiyah Rabavo. Rabbi Yirmiyah asks Rabavo, there's a Mishnah later here. This is and Daf Chav Zayin. The Mishnah says, Shvuah shaloi eichel kikezu, person makes a shvuah, I will not eat this loaf of bread. And then he says the second time, Shvuah shaloyach lana, I will not eat it. And the third time, Shvuah shaloyach lana, I will not eat it. And va'achla, and he went and did eat it. So would he be? How many times would he be chayiv? He made a shvuah 3 times in the same loaf of bread. Ein chayiv ela achas. He'll only be chayiv for the first shvuah that he made. And the reason is, as we'll learn about this barichas later here in the Masechta, ein issa chal al isser. Once you made a shvuah, and not as an isser for you to eat it, a second isser does not take effect. And the Mishnah there finishes off and says, Zuhi shvuas bitui. This is the utterance of a shvuah. Shechayavin al zadaina makis. That if you bemazed are over on the shvuah, then you get malchus for this. Val shigigasa. And in the case of a shegi, when you are over on this shvuah, you have a carbon oile v'yayred, the carbon which goes up and down for a rich and poor person. That's the conclusion of the lashon of that Mishnah. So the question is, why does it say zuhi? Zuhi lemutamai. If it's saying this is it, it's coming to exclude something. What is it coming to exclude? So lav, don't you think, lemuute achalti v'loy achalti deloy loki, it's coming to say that if a person made a shvuah on the past, and the moment he said it out of its mouth, it's a sheker, and there's no action involved, that it's coming to be memayit, that case, that there is no malchus. So this is a question on the way Rabbi Vo explained the drasha of Rabbi Yechanan, that we compare Shavuos sheker to Shavuos shav, and he explained that they're both talking about the past, and achalti v'lo achalti, you are chayiv malchus. Says the Gemara, loy, that's not the pshat of this lashon of the Mishnah zuhi. It's taka coming to exclude something, but it's not coming to exclude the malchus. The malchus we already darshan that you are chayiv. But what is it coming to darshan? In the case where a person makes a shvuah and it's about the past, that over there it's being memayit mekarbon. That if he's when he's over on this, the moment those words came out of his mouth, it's a lie. You don't bring a carbon for this. Zuhi the al shigigasa carbon oil. That only this, when a person made a shvuah for the future and he did not keep his shvuah, then he brings the carbon of oil v'yoyed. But if he's making a shvuah regarding the past, over there is no carbon of v'yoyed. Like there's no carbon. Now the Gemara explains, according to whose? There's Malchus, right? Because of the drasha of Rabbi Yechanan, but not a carbon. Now whose opinion is this? This is actually a machlekes, and we had this earlier in the Masechta. For Rabbi Shmuel, the fact that in such a case there's no carbon is according to Rabbi Shmuel. The Amar Rabbi Shmuel says, Einoi chayiv ela al ha'asad lavai. The only time one is chayiv to bring a carbon if he makes a shvuah sheker is if he makes a shvuah about the future and he doesn't keep his shvuah. And that's because in the pasuk it says lahara ilaheta, which is future tense. Aval milkilaki. But malchus the person will still get because of the drasha that we said before, the 2 times shav that we compare. That's the way we explain this Mishnah. Again, this is a Mishnah later here on Daf Chav Zayin. But now there's yet another Mishnah later there. Hey, Misayfe, go on to a next Mishnah there. That's the Mishnah on Daf Chav Tes. So there the Mishnah says, the Mishnah there is speaking about the Shevuos Shav. And the Shevuos Shav were the case of a person that swears about a rock that it's a piece of gold. And the Mishnah concludes and says, Zui Shevuos Shav. This is the Shvuah in vain. Shechayave and al zadoina makis. That if b'mezid a person makes such a Shvuah, he gets malchus. But val shegigasa potter. If this Shvuah was made b'sheigig, then there is no carbon for this. The carbon is only for a Shevuos sheker, referring to a person that says something about the future or even the past, but not something that everybody knows about. A Shevuos shav, which is in vain, something that everyone knows about. Here, there's no din of a carbon b'chlal. Okay, now here as well, the question is, why does this Mishnah use this term of zuhi? What is it coming to exclude? Zuhi lemute mai. So my love, don't you think the pshat over here is lemuute achalti v'lo achalti? So again, the Gemara asks, maybe it's coming to exclude regarding a person that swears about the past, but not something that everybody knows about. Achalti v'lo achalti, I ate or I did not eat. The loy lucky that for this there would not be any malchus. So this is, again, a question of what Rabbi Vo said before to explain what Rabbi Yochanan said, that you do get malchus for this. So the Gemara again answers and says, no, loy, that's not what it's coming to exclude. Zuhi, it's only this case. When a person is making a shvuah shavt, l'shanis isayidua, the al shigigasa potem carbon. That if b'sheigig, there's no carbon for this. Aval, achalti, v'loy achalti, when a person makes a shvuah regarding the past, but it's not something that everybody knows, it's regarding something personal, I ate or I did not eat, over here, al shigigasa chayiv carbon. If this was made, b'sheigig, this was sheker, there will be a carbon for this, even though it's on the past. And it's not the lahara and lahetiv, which is future tense that the Torah is speaking about. That's what it's coming to exclude. Okay, so if so, the Gemara asks, well, the Gemara first says, V'Rabakivihi. Who's of the opinion that when you make a shvuah and at the moment it came out of your mouth it was a lie because it's about the past, that you be chayiv a carbon for this, even though it's not what it says clearly in the pasuk? This is Rabbi Akiva's opinion. The mechayiv l'sha'ovar kilahaba. He says that you chayiv for a carbon for a shvuah that you make regarding the past, just like you chayiv a carbon when you make that shvuah regarding the future. So if so, the conclusion of the Gemara here is that you have these 2 Mishnahs, one of Chav Zayin, one of Chav Tes. So there's 2 different opinions here, Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva. Frek the Gemara, but ha'amre reisha Rabbi Yishmael. We just explained that from the Mishnah before, it's coming to say that for achalti v'lo achalti, zuhi, that we exclude achalti v'lo achalti, that there's no carbon, like Rabbi Yishmael's opinion. So reisha Rabbi Yishmael v'sefer Rabbi Akiva. Are we going to say that the first Mishnah on Daf Chav Zayin, that's Rabbi Yishmael, and then the next Mishnah on Daf Chav Tes, that's Rabbi Akiva, regarding this halacha, whether there's a carbon for achalti v'lo achalti? So the Gemara concludes and says, no, kule Rabbi Akiva. It's all Rabbi Akiva. Now, going back to the Reisha over there, where it said Zuhi, lav lemu'ute achalti v'lo achalti mekarbon, it's not coming to exclude the case of achalti v'lo achalti from a carbon, because then it would not be like Rabbi Akiva. Or rather, what is that coming to exclude when the Mishnah says Zuhi lemu'ute oichol v'lo yachal? It's coming to exclude malchus. Going back to the pshat that the Gemara wanted to say before, that it's coming to exclude another case from malchus. But which case though? The case of oichol v'lo yachal. As we said before, when a person makes a shvuah regarding the future that I will eat, and he did not eat, so over here when he was over on the shvuah there was no action involved, so there's no malchus for this. As the Gemara explained before, that's not included in the shav, in the extra time shav. It's not included in that. So therefore, in this case, there's no malchus. That's the case that it's coming to exclude. Aval carbon mechayiv, but a carbon you would be chayiv for achalti v'lo achalti. That's what that Mishnah is excluding. So therefore, both Mishnahs can be Rabbi Akiva's opinion. Now the Gemara explains, why are we teaching, why are we explaining the exclusion of that Mishnah this way? Umayshna, what's the difference? Why over there are you saying that it's coming to exclude this case of the future of Eichel v'lo yachal, to say that there's no malchus? Maybe it's coming to exclude the case of achalti v'lo yachalti, that there's be no carbon, and then it would be like Rabbi Yishmael. Says the Gemara, because mistavre, it's logical that you go by the context of the Mishnah. Koi b'lahaba. if the Mishnah is speaking about a person that's making a Shevuah regarding the future, memayit lahaba, it comes to exclude when it says zuhi, and it's excluding something in that context regarding the future. If the case of the Mishnah is speaking about a person that swears regarding the future, I would say that it's coming to exclude a case that's not associated to this, a case about the past. That's not what it's coming to exclude. And therefore, that Mishnah is only coming to exclude Malkus regarding a Shvuah for the future when there's no action involved. Okay, that's the conclusion of the Sinyan here. Now the Gemara goes back to the Mishnah, where it said Shvuah shaloi oichol, a person swears that he's not going to eat, and v'achal kol shehu. He ate a tiny drop, less than a kazayas. So chayiv. Rabbi Akiva says that for such a case, the person will be chayiv, even though usually it's supposed to be a kazayas, but over here he's chayiv. And the Chachamim argue with Rabbi Akiva on this and say that it has to be a kazayas. Okay, so now, when you learn the simple pshat of the Mishnah, it seems that the argument is specifically here regarding a shvuah. But the Gemara actually has a shaila about this. The shaila was asked, Rabbi Akiva, b'chol ha'toyra kula k'Rab Shimon sviralei? Rabbi Akiva that's saying here regarding the shvuah, that if he doesn't keep the shvuah and he eats, so is it not only here, in all of Torah, and there's any isser to eat anything, whatever isser it may be, he holds in Kol HaTorah like Rab Shimon's opinion. What's Rab Shimon's opinion? The Mechayev b'mashu. Rab Shimon doesn't hold of this whole shear of a kazayas. Any isser of achila means even a mashu. The Tanya, as we learned in the Braise, and we learned this in Masechta Makis. Rab Shimon says, Kol shehu lemakis. Anything, any isser in the Torah, if you're over on that isser of eating, b'mezid, even a kol shehu, you'll be chayev malchus. Kazayas, this halacha l'moshe misina, that there's a minimum amount of a kazayas to be chayiv elolinian carbon. That's only regarding bringing a carbon. Now, ubedinhu. So now, based on this, the Gemara explains, if this is true, that Rabbi Akiva really argues on the Chachamim and Kol HaTorah Kula that it's always less than a kazayas. So then, why is Rabbi Akiva arguing only over here in this Mishnah regarding a shvuah? So the Gemara explains, ubedinhu de bayif lugebalme. Really, Rabbi Akiva should have argued all over, like Rab Shimon. The reason why the reason why the Mishnah records and brings up to machlokes over here, because it wants to let you know to what extent the Rabbanan argue with Rabbi Akiva, that they're not only arguing in other places, but they're arguing even here by a shvuah. Because when it comes to a shvuah, there would be room to say that hoyel umefarish chayiv by a shvuah. If a person explicitly says that I'm making a shvuah not to eat even a mashahu, so then everybody would agree that the rule of the minimum to be a kazayas would not apply. The person clearly said that his intention is not to eat even a mashu. So therefore I would say, stam nami chayiv. Even if a person did not specify that he doesn't want to eat anything, even a mashu, even if he just said, I don't want to eat, maybe that includes a mashu as well, because shvuah is different. By shvuah, you go by the das of the person. What was the person thinking? And therefore there's a svara to say that when a person, in the way people speak, when you say, I'm not going to eat, not going to eat means I'm not going to eat anything, even a mashu. So therefore, maybe here the Chachamim would agree to Rabbi Akiva that it's even a mashu. So Kamash Malon, that's why it brings up the machlokes here to teach me the patri. That the Chachamim even here say that no, that the term achila that he says must be a kazayas. That's why it's brought here. But really, Rabbi Akiva argues in Kol HaTorah Kula that you don't have to have dafka kazayas. Or we can say ba'alme karabanan svirale. Usually, Rabbi Akiva agrees to the Rabbanon that the shear of the Isser of Achila is a Kazayas. The reason why they argue here is because the svara that was just mentioned. Since if he explicitly says a mashahu, so over here the shear would be that mashahu, so stam nami chayiv, even if he didn't explicitly say it, but we understand that when he says I'm not going to eat, in the language of people, I'm not going to eat means that he intends not to eat at all. And therefore here this is an exception. Tashama, so the Gemara says, well, let's see in the actual conversation, in the words that Rabbi Akiva himself says to the Chachamim in the Mishnah. The Amru Loi le Rabbi Akiva, the Chachamim say to Rabbi Akiva, Heicha metzina ba'eichel kol shu chayiv. Where do we ever find that if a person just eats a kol shu, he would be chayiv? Shazah chayiv that you're saying over here as well, that if he swears and then he doesn't keep the shvu and he eats, that he'll be chayiv even of a kol shu. That was the question that they asked Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Akiva answers and says that no, shvu is different. But if you're going to say that Rabbi Akiva actually is of the opinion all over, that it's always a Isser for a Mashahu, so Lei Maluhu, Rabbi Akiva should answer them the truth and say, Anna b'chala Torah kulak Rab Shimon svirili. I am of the opinion of Rab Shimon that always the Shir is a Mashu. So what are you asking me that where do you find such a thing? This is always the halacha that you get Malchus even for eating a Mashu by any Isser. Says the Gemara, that's not a proof. We could say, L'devrayim de Rabbanan ka'amalahu. Rabbi Akiva is saying this, according to your opinion, I can still explain that this case is different. Lididi, my opinion is, I hold like Rab Shimon that it's always a mashahu. But lididchu, according to your opinion, that there's a share of kazayis by another case of Isra Achila, but you should admit to me in this case that a shavu is different because if he explicitly says a mashahu, then the Isra will be that mashahu. So stam, even without saying it explicitly, that's what the person means when he says he's not going to eat, and therefore you should agree to me over here. And the Rabbanan say to him, no, that we can't say that when he doesn't specify a mashahu, that it means a mashahu. So therefore there's no raya from the conversation of the Mishnah. But the Gemara does bring a raya, or a few rayas, from other places, where we see clearly Rabbi Akiva's opinion. So Tashama, the Gemara brings from what it says that Rabbi Akiva said, regarding a nazir. Right? So a nazir, one of the isurim of a nazir is that he's not allowed to drink wine. So the Mishnah says, Nazir sheshara pitoy b'yayin. A Nazir that soaked a piece of bread in wine. V'yeshba kedei l'tzaref kazayis. Now, if you look at the whole bread, there's a kazayis in this bread. Now, if you look at the wine, part of the bread has wine in it, part of the bread does not have wine in it. But the Rashi brings that you learn out from the pasuk by a Nazir. It says not only you shouldn't drink wine, but it says also mishras anovim, anything that's soaked, that's in wine. So therefore, even that part of the bread that does not have wine in it will combine to the shear of the kazayis that he should be over on eating this or drinking this wine, which is now the bread is soaked in. That's the chiddush. You mitzaref, even the entire bread, even the part that does not have wine in it. So again, a little bit of wine, fast a little bit of wine, but the whole bread, if you mitzaref together, it's a kazayis, then even the rest of the bread is mitzaref to the iser. V'yeshba kedei l'tzaref kazayis, the whole bread you could combine to the amount of a kazayis chayiv, will be chayiv for the iser of the wine by the nazir. And this is Rabbi Akiva. Now it says the Gemara, v'isal kedaitach. If you're going to say that Baal mek Rab Shimon svirelei, that Rabbi Akiva holds like Rab Shimon, that this whole concept of kazayis does not exist by any isurim of the Torah, it's all just a mashahu. So then lama li litzaref. So then what do you need the other part of the bread to be mitzaref to the shir of a kazayis? It could be a mashahu. So that's one clear ayat that Rabbi Akiva says that it's a shir of a kazayis. For Oitnan, another ayat, there's a Mishnah that says shvuah shaloi oichel, a person makes a shvuah that he's not going to eat. And what happened? He was over on the Shevuos, but what did he eat? He ate from foods that are forbidden without a Shevuos. Chayev. So he'll be chayev for being over on the Shevuos. That's what the Tanna Kama says. But Rab Shimon, paiter. But Rab Shimon says, no, if what he ate was things that are anyways also from before, so then he's going to be pater. Why? What's the reason? Because Rab Shimon holds, since it's already also from before, mushba v'oimid mahar Sinai, and once there's an iser, the rule is, as I mentioned before, ein iser chal al iser. When something is also, you cannot bring a second iser on. There's no place for the second iser to take effect. Now, about this, the question was asked. So, what's the explanation of the Tanna Kama here? Amai chayev. Why does the Tanna Kama say that he would be chayev if he eats from those forbidden foods? Mushba mahar Sinai, who it is already a shvuah from Har Sinai that this is forbidden. So the second isra cannot take effect. And what's the explanation for this? So Rav, Shmuel, Rabbi Yochanan, the Amri Tarvayu, all three of them actually, so some they take out the word Tarvayu here, some take it out. They all three explained that the reason why over here the Shvuah will take effect regarding this forbidden foods, even though usually Ein Isser, Chalal Isser, is because B'kailol Dvaram Hamutarim Im Dvaram Ma'asurim. Because in this case, he's making a Shvuah that now adds to the Isser. Because he's now including that he's not only not going to eat these forbidden foods, which he's anyways not allowed to eat, but he's not going to eat any foods. So when do you say ein issa chalal issa? If you want a second issa to be chal on the same issa, limited only to what it was until now. But if he's koilel, if he's adding more things into this issa, then it does take effect. That's what the Tanna Kama says, that he'll be chayiv here for this shvuah when he ate this. Okay, well, this is going to be a big discussion here later in the Masechta. We'll see about this concept, Isser Kailo, when you add and you include more. Now, for Reish Lakish disagrees. Reish Lakish says that in this case, this concept of Isser Kailo, when you include more, does not apply. By a Shevuah, it does not apply. We'll see later in the Masechta, it will be explained. So therefore, Reish Lakish says, you do not find to apply this that the Tanakama says, that he would be chayiv for this Shevuah, even though he ate something that's already asa from before, ella, only in the following cases. Mefarish chatzi shir, either in a case where this person said clearly that his Shevuah is that he's not even going to eat a chatzi shir, meaning the isam and not to eat from the velas tereifis shkatzim means that he's not going to eat a shir of a kazayas. And then when he made a Shevuah, he said, I'm not going to eat even a half a kazayis. He said explicitly. So because he clearly said a chatzi kazayis, that's not what was asam and atayra. So the issa could be chal. So that's according to the Rabbanan. I'll leave it the Rabbanan, because according to the Rabbanan, if he does not say this explicitly, then even by a Shevuah, the issa would only be a kazayis. So according to the Rabbanan, if he explicitly said chatzi shir, so then this Shevuah will take effect. Or ibistam, I'll leave it the Rabbi Kiva. Or even without explicitly saying that it's going to be less than a kazayas, according to Rabbi Kiva, the Omar Adam Oyser Atzmai B'chol Shehu, that a person could aser upon himself not to eat, and it's going to be even a kol shehu. So therefore, the Shevuah will take effect, again, because the Issim and Atayra on the Nevelis, Shkatzim and Ramasim and so on, is on the share of a kazayas, and he's now making a Shevuah not to eat even a half a kazayas, and he doesn't even have to specify that. That's what the Shevuah is, according to Rabbi Kiva, as we're learning here. So now the Gemara says, according to what Reish Lakish is saying here, we clearly see that according to Rabbi Kiva, in Kol HaTorah Kulo, the shir is a kazayas. Because if you're going to say that Rabbi Kiva always holds like Rab Shimon, that kol shu, so if so, kol shuhu nami mushba v'oimid mar sinayu. In Kol HaTorah Kulo, the issa not eaten velis atrefis is also a kol shu. There's no shir of a kazayas. So if he makes a shvuah not to eat a kol shu, what is he adding in his shvuah? Where is there a place for a shvuah to take effect? Therefore, we clearly see over here that Ba'almet, Rabbanan, Svirele, Rabbi Kiva holds like the Rabbanan regarding other Yisurim that the shir is a kazayas, and here this is an exception. Shvu is an exception. Shema Mino, this is a clear raya to this point.
Okay, it's like